Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's final session of our 2022 Wellness Series. My name is Kara Marsh Prophet, and I am the Director of Alumni Operations and Engagement at the University of San Diego. I am thrilled that you were here today and so excited to hear from our featured presenter a little bit later and very shortly. Today's session is co-hosted by the USD Alumni Association and School of Leadership and Education Sciences. The mission of the Alumni Association is to engage and enrich the Torero community for life. Today's program is rooted in the desire to offer meaningful ways for our community to stay in touch and learn from one another. We know how strong our USD network is and hope these types of virtual opportunities will continue to strengthen the connection while bringing value to our lives. Without further ado, I would like to introduce today's facilitator, Amanda Gonzalez, my colleague, who will be introducing our featured speaker, Amber Sutter. Thank you, Amanda.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Amanda, and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations for the School of Leadership and Education Sciences, or SOLS, and I will be introducing alum Amber Sutter. Amber is the Chief Enlightenment Officer for Conscious Public Accountants, whose mission is to guide accountants back to their wholeness. As coach, Amber works with a select number of clients who are the best at what they do, yet they still hunger for education. They chose Amber because of her intellect, authenticity, and drive to educate them in ways they've never experienced. As a speaker, Amber's voice is a force, making her a well-regarded and sought-out conference speaker. A blend of grace and warrior spirit, Amber brings up the undiscussable and uncovers the undiscoverable. Amber holds a master's in leadership studies from the University of San Diego School of Leadership and Education Sciences and a bachelor's in business administration, accounting from San Jose State University. She's a graduate of Accomplishment Coaching and ICF accredited coaches training program, and she also completed their advanced leadership program as a mentor coach. Amber is an inactive CPA and an ICF professional certified coach. Amber was recognized by the Cal CPA as a woman to watch in the experienced leader category. She is a national expert on building coaching cultures within the accounting profession. Her professional experience includes serving as an internal and external coach, facilitating and coaching within leadership development experiences, and building a nationally recognized learning and development function. Amber, please join us.
Hello, it's great to see Kara. Kara and I had classes together, and thank you, Amanda, for reaching out to me for this opportunity to share maybe some wisdom, some insights to get us all involved in a conversation today. So one sec while I get my technology going over here. Tech is not my strong suit, talking to people about feelings much more. So I mentioned that at the start because I started my career as an accountant, and it didn't take me long to realize that that was not my jam. That was not where I really wanted to play. And where I would be better served is working with the hearts and minds in conjunction, really. So accounting is very mind-based. School of leadership work, professional coaching work, consciousness is heart-based, intuitive, and the work that I do is bring it all together. So what we're going to explore today really is not super related to accounting. You'll see conscious public accountants, and that's what I do. But as I said earlier to Karen and Amanda, the riches are in the niches. So I've really niched in there. But really, when we talk about performance and consciousness, it's a lot of what goes on for a knowledge worker. And as you probably know, but I still want to distinguish, a knowledge worker is somebody who is using their mind to produce results, to be of service, to give to the world, over using their muscles like on a factory line and manual labor. So when we talk about performance and consciousness, a lot of this is really kind of steeped in what it is like for a knowledge worker, which many of you may be. Just one quick housekeeping thing, because I realized that I don't have the chat open and I want to be able to use that. So just give me one quick second here. I'm going to stop my share and then restart my share to do that. All right, I'm back. So, before I kind of dive into this particular topic is something super near and dear to my heart because I'm really on this mission. I'm at a point in my life and my career where my business is not just about money and it's really about impact. It's about service. And I'm all about how do we wake people up to the possibilities that lie at the intersection of consciousness and performance. And so what I've learned either conceptually through the years or in practice is really effective leader development is so much more than what is visible to the eyes. Potential really is unleashed when we're brave enough to dive deep into matters of the heart and matters of the soul. So I'm excited to share a little bit more of that. But I think another important step for us right now is I want to do something which is called a community check-in. And this is why I had to get our chat box open. So I would like for those who are here, for all of us, just in a moment to stop and pause and do something that is called a community check-in. So the community check-in is where you say whatever you need to say to fully land to this space, to this webinar, to our time together. So you might share an internal state, such as a feeling that's going on inside of you. Maybe you're tired, you're distracted, you're sad, whatever it is, maybe you want to share that internal state. Or maybe you might report an interior goal. What do you hope to take away from our time together? Or perhaps you want to just let others in on something that might be pulling at your attention, right? Like I've got this work deadline going on that's distracting me, or I'm afraid my dog might bark, which is true for me right now. So again, would you now go into the chat and just do the community check-in and share whatever you need to say to fully land to this space? So we've got one person who is grateful. And just to clarify, you want to use the chat, not the Q&A box, because I can't see the Q&A right now. All right. Someone's looking forward to not grading papers, perhaps some relief in there. So as I give you all a moment of reflection, I'm going to share a little bit about where I've got this practice from and what it opens up for people. And then another person says, I'm having to multitask right now, a lot of stuff going on, so it's difficult to be fully present, especially with all that is going on in the world. And that's the reality, right? I think today is a big moment for many people. I just made a post today on LinkedIn, and this is sort of what I have to say to fully land here, which is if you're a conscious leader, if you're thinking about being conscious and fully showing up for yourself, fully showing up for other people because their performance is impacted in light of world events, consider if you're working with parents to say something like this. As a parent, how are you in light of current events? So if you're leading a team and you just start a day like today, getting down to business, and you overstep what's really in their space and what's really beneath the surface, they're wasting a lot of their energy holding their feelings down and keeping them at bay. And so having something like a community check-in, whether it's at the beginning of a webinar, whether it's at the beginning of a team meeting, whether it's the beginning of a quarterly check-in, it's a chance for people to fully land and get present and make a choice, right? If somebody's like, oh, I'm totally distracted, I need to get something else done. Well, maybe you'd be better served getting something else done because the webinar sounded like a great idea 2 weeks ago. Whatever your choice is, Just make a choice, because you can't be in two spaces at one time effectively. And that gets to consciousness and performance. I got this idea from a book that I highly recommend and love. It's called An Everyone Culture, Becoming a Deliberately Developmental Organization. And it's authored by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy. And for those of you who went to Souls, you probably heard about adult development, which we're going to talk about. But it's really, the book looks at what if a company did everything in its power to help create a culture where everyone is overcoming their barriers to change, and they're using errors and vulnerabilities as opportunities for personal and company growth, right? So how important personal growth is. Personal growth creates better business outcomes, right? Or better organizational outcomes. Doesn't have to just be in business. So really wonderful book to help people grow holistically. So once you fully land in a space, and for those three of you that shared, let me just kind of, as a housekeeping item, Amanda or Kara, can you just shoot me a message of how many people are here so that I have an opportunity to speak more directly to people? And the question was, can I repeat the name of the book? It's called An Everyone Culture by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy. And they're really, at the forefront of adult development theory. I love all of their books, but this one particularly has case studies of organizations where they took this developmental approach and how these organizations did it practically, and then the outcomes in the business. Okay, so there are 8 participants. Good to know, helps me to better gauge and speak to you guys more targeted. So let's now kind of shift to noticing in yourself when you have done the practice of a community check-in and you've said what you needed to say to land to the space, which requires you to stop, pause, look within and say, well, what do I need? What's going on with me? What's the shift that goes on inside of you? How do you feel now as in comparison to when we first started? You might be more present, the same, you're distracted, or there's something else. And as you put whatever there is for you, there's no right or wrong answer. What I'm really doing here is modeling to you ways that you can be a more conscious leader and ways that you can get others to be more present to what's going on inside of them, because all of that impacts performance. So with our time today, we're going to do a few things. Really, one of my main goals, and hold on, my animations weren't working here, is really reorient your approach to what professional development and performance mean. We want to then look at how consciousness structures itself by way of adult development theory. And then I'm going to go over provide an overview of common leadership assets and behavioral liabilities. Now, you can tell I'm an accountant talking about assets and liabilities, but assets are good. You want more money. Liabilities is you owe something. It's ineffective, not good. And ultimately just really wake you up to possibilities for leading more powerfully in a world that has increased volatility, complexity, ambiguity, all of those things. So in your experience, before you landed here today, I'm curious, when you think of performance and performance management in the system that you're in today currently, or where you've been before, what is it synonymous? What does it usually mean? Is it around performance is measured by metrics? Your performance is related to your competence? Performance might be related to personal development, all of the above or none of the above. What has it been for you? So we have a couple with all of the above. Someone put in money. That's a good one. More all of the above. So in my background, where I came from, the accounting world, there was, I would say, a very, and still is, a very heavy lean towards metrics and competence, right? Like there's a lot of, let's look at the deadline. Did people meet their timelines? Did they meet their goals in time? How smart are they? We need more education. And in fact, it's kind of sad, and it's something that I advocate against. But in California, for my CPA license, which you might have seen is inactive because of this particular issue, the California Board of Accountancy, which is designed, it's a part of the Department of Consumer Affairs and designed to protect Californians, it suggests that personal development specifically does not help a practitioner who's doing your work. So for all of you who ever work with a tax accountant, filing your tax return, your business stuff, whatever it might be, they think personal development doesn't matter. And I actually think it matters most, because when you're working with people and money, there's a lot of emotion that comes up, and you need to know what's going on with your emotion and their emotion. So I'm grateful for many of you that say, hey, it's a little bit of all of this. But what I see for the future of work is that it's really about personal development, because competence is everywhere. You can do a Google search and find answers, right? And that is a commodity, because you can find a lot of answers and a lot of information, but actually how you learn how to critically think, how you learn how to be with a working parent who's like, man, school drop off today rocked me. That 5-minute walk when I dropped my kid off, I'm crushed, and I'm sitting down at my desk and I can't do my job because there's something big emotionally inside of me. I'm a strong advocate for consciousness is where it's at, clearly, given the title, right? So let's kind of say, well, sounds nice, but what does this actually look like in practice? So I really believe that performance for a knowledge worker is much like an iceberg, right? There's the 10% that we can see, and there's the 90% beneath the surface that we cannot see. So the 10% is the observable action a person takes. So practically speaking, we can see if a person completes their work on time. We can see, how many hours they put in, or what time they're doing their work, or maybe they're physically in the office. But we don't always explore, like, looking at the idea of a timeline and a work deadline. If you personally miss a deadline, how often do you ask yourself why? And if you permit yourself to be curious, how deeply are you willing to look for the answer? So as a professional coach for my own life and in my practice with other people, we always say coaching is a learning zone. It's not a performance zone. So a very practical experience from my own life. I do a lot of freelance writing, and I try to write original things that haven't been said before. And sometimes those are met with opposition. Sometimes people don't like my ideas. And so I was noticing on my little to-do list, I always have these little scratchy to-do lists, that I would have like, okay, write this article. And that to-do would just hang out on my to-do list and it wouldn't get done. And it wasn't getting done, not because of I have a time management issue. There was something deeper beneath the surface. And for me, what was deeper beneath the surface related to that task was a fear inside of my mind that I would put an article out and people wouldn't like it, wouldn't agree with it. And, that would make it mean something about me. So again, like the richness for the depth of why am I taking action or not? Why am I performing at work or not is the stuff that's beneath the surface. So the unobservable 90%, it's not our doing, it's our being. It's the stuff that goes on inside of us. This is what drives our actions or keeps us from taking action. It might be our beliefs, our fears, our feelings, our hopes, our expectations. And much of this stuff beneath the surface is hardwired and driven by unconscious patterns of thinking and feeling. So to uncover what's in the way of optimal performance, whether it's for yourself or someone on your team, the place to look is in the deeper stuff, right? So I really love as a coach to explore these deeper waters with other people and just understand why. Didn't get done. Okay, it didn't get done, but why? That's where all the growth is going to be at. So I invite you all to wake up to a new possibility that really competence is a commodity. Conscious leaders are those that have a deep understanding of themselves, and they're really guiding others to do the same. One of the things I was earlier chatting, I love it because I was chatting a little bit with Kara and Amanda and just talking about the state of the world and a little bit as parenting. I chose to enroll my daughter in something called Waldorf education. And I'll just share a little bit about it because it's kind of underscores and exemplifies this idea of competence as a commodity. So one of the things that Waldorf education does is when the children are little, they're not given textbooks, they're not memorizing things that already exist. They're creating their own textbooks throughout the year. And when they leave a grade, they have their textbook that they created for that year. But a big reason that they're doing this is they're trying to, from the start, teach children how to think of what is the next best question to ask to answer the solutions that we're going to need in the future. How do we give them these skills? Because if you just memorize everything, what you're memorizing might be obsolete information in the future. So there's a part of how do we learn how to have curiosity over competence, and also learn how do we have awareness of self, of what's driving our behavior, whether it's positive behavior or negative behavior. What I want to do now is take us into the concept of adult development, which really reveals how consciousness is structured. So I would love in the chat to see if you tell me, yes, I've heard of adult development theory before, or no, because I realize I'm on here with people in the School of Leadership, which are probably scholars and might have heard of it. And I'm used to talking with people who don't know much about it. So that will help me. All right, so I see a few no's, a couple yeses. For what it's worth, I heard there's an amazing adult development class led by Zachary Green in the PhD in Leadership program. Amanda, if that is not true and there's a different instructor now, tell me. I've heard it's amazing. I've never taken it and I've dreamed of auditing that course. Yeah, I see. Yes, Dr. Green is amazing. So this theory, I think, is a game changer, and I'm excited to share a little bit more about it. Adult development, let's just start off with human development. So our society understands what human development means, which is how does the human physically develop, right? From baby to elderly. So we have books and apps, like when a woman is pregnant, that give the week by week updates on how a fetus develops and the changes it undergoes. And we know that usually children start crawling and then they walk around age 1 and then they start talking. And then there's the teenage adolescent years that might be a little more fiery. And then there's transition into early adult. And until the 1980s, there was this accepted picture of a mental development, which was akin to human development, that human growth ends in our 20s. However, that's not the case. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, as well as in my experience as a coach, human beings continue to develop and grow psychologically. And there are clues to this in our society, where someone has what is called a midlife crisis. Like even one of my clients is like, oh, turning 40, that midlife crisis thing. And I'm like, girl, it's not a midlife 40-year-old crisis. You're going through an adult development. You're shifting there, right? So it's really about adult development is how we continue to grow psychologically. So some of the basics of adult development. There's no correlation to IQ. So if we looked at a population of 10 40-year-olds, It doesn't mean because they're 40, they're all at the same place. They might all be at different places. There's also no correlation to IQ. This isn't a test of intellect. It's a test of sort of, and test is probably the wrong word, but it's really like how much self-awareness does a person have? Is a person defined by the thoughts that are running rampant all the time in their mind? Or are they able to distinguish like, oh, I look at that. I keep having this persistent recurring thought. Where did that come from? Do I want this thought anymore? No, this is not serving me. It keeps me up at night. I'm just going to put that one to bed and I'm not, do something with that. But you can see that you have some awareness of self. When we talk about adult development, why would we want to grow psychologically? Because when we grow psychologically, we are better able to be with more complexity and ambiguity. So we take more responsibility for our own thinking, our own feeling, our filters, and how we see in the world. The other thing is it doesn't unfold continuously. It's not, you might have seen those like really funny memes where it's like, what I think success looks like. And it's like, I start here and it's this like nice, steady, linear path up. And it's like, well, what does it really look like? And it's up, down, goes backwards, around. So it's not like this straight up continuum. You might have periods of a lot of growth and then stability, and you might contract back a bit and then snap into more fully. So it's not super black and white and linear. Let's now shift to, well, what are some of the fundamentals of adult development? So what I have here is the three, what they call plateaus. And this comes from, again, a lot of the work that is done in research by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy. They're phenomenal and they've got several books out there. They're authors at Harvard. So let's start off from the left-hand side. I'm looking over at my monitors. So the socialized mind is like kind of after the teenage adolescent years. Let's start with socialized mind. And I liken this stage to an Uber because this sense of self is often unconsciously driven around by other people. So we see this when we meet college students, right? So they're asking us to provide direction for their career. Us being, we're in career services, we work on campus. I used to be a campus recruiter. I was talking to students, talking to them about careers in accounting and hiring them. And when you've never been an adult, it's really, really a great idea to get other people's opinion. What should I major in? What would I be good at? What could you see me doing? Where should I live with my life? What kind of companies should I talk to, right? You want to get the input and perspective of others, sort of crowdsourcing ideas on to how to take your path. And we see this at an organizational level when companies want to emulate the best practices of other organizations. So recently I have a program that I do, a coaching program, and the HR person came back to me and she's like, oh, our CEO wants to know what other companies are using this program. And I said, that's the wrong question to ask. You need to ask, what do your employees need? That's more important than best practices out there. So again, socialized mind is being driven around unconsciously by other people's ideas of what that path should be for them. Then one moves into self-authoring mind. And the self-authoring mind, this shift is more towards an orientation from outward, getting input, to inward. I look inside myself and I think, what do I want out of my life? What do I really want? So I think a lot of what's going on with the Great Resignation is a lot of people design this life, and I see this a lot in my coaching practice because I tend to work with people who are high in achievement and low in happiness. They did everything someone told them to do. They got to that promotion, that amount of salary, that house, that car, whatever external things, and they're miserable on the inside. And that's when the quote unquote midlife crisis happens, because somebody's like, man, who am I? And what do I want out of life? And that's where you have to start really doing the inner work and exploring, which is what professional coaching provides. So without having awareness of who you are and what matters most to you, actions are unconsciously driven. And a lot of times, as I mentioned earlier on the slide with the metaphor of the iceberg, what's going on is it's like memorized patterns of thinking and feeling. So an example from my own life, I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic, very chaotic when I was growing up. A long time of my life, I was addicted to chaos because that was normal, but I wasn't conscious of it, right? So we have to start learning about what are my automatic ways of thinking and feeling, and do those suit me anymore? Or is it time for me to upgrade my inner operating system? So self-authoring mind, when you get to this sort of space, you're really conscious of your own self and your own needs, and you're willing to drive your own car. At an organizational level, it's less caring about that, what's somebody else doing. It's rather turning inward in your organization and saying, what do my employees really need? What does my team really need? And this is a much more effective way to lead as an individual or lead a team or a system. The third level is pretty rare. It's where I'd like to get my life. I'm not there yet, but it's the self-transforming mind. And I like to think of this like the application on your phone, Waze. So Waze, when you go to map somewhere, it's not really rigid, like I have to go this path. Waze, if it realizes there's a better path, it's just going to give you a new route, right? And in fact, it might even, Waze doesn't do this, but as a self-transforming leader, you're going to be open to new destinations. So when COVID happened, and everyone had to work from home, it's a new destination. And fortunately, organizations had to find a way to do it or they would go out of business. But that was a new destination that couldn't be predicted. And it's why I love adult development theory, because how do we effectively lead in a world with so much change, right? We need a higher level leader. With the self-transforming mind, really the ego has dissolved. So the self-transforming leader is happy to be the driver or the passenger in the front seat or the back. The ego doesn't have to be like, shotgun, come on, it's my way or the highway. Shows up very differently. It's not going to get derailed by an unexpected road closure. So sometimes when I coach people, they're like, dang it, this is my goal and I didn't get there. Waze doesn't do that. Waze doesn't get mad at itself like, oh my gosh, there's a detour. Let me spend 10 minutes getting mad at myself that I did the wrong map. No, it's just like, reroute real fast. Doesn't give a lot of energy, just reroutes in the moment. At organizational level, how does the self-transforming organization show up? So they really view humanity as a cultural priority. We bring our whole self to work. We do a community check-in. We say what there is to bring to the space so that human beings can flourish, and they're not using all of their energy hiding what's going on for them. So another big idea from that book, In Everyone Culture, is that everybody in an organization has a part-time job of managing their insecurity. So you give permission for people to grow and say whatever's true for them. And once they let it out, it's like, okay, now I can do my work, right? It totally is a game changer. I'm going to just show a couple of things here now about adult development theory. So socialized mind, what might be the pros and the cons? It shows up as a great team player, a faithful follower, really aligning with whatever the mission is, but they're going to seek a lot of direction. What should I do? Where should I go? They need approval. They need affirmation, right? And they become a little too reliant on the leader. So pros and cons to that. Cues that someone is at this level, right? So they're leaning on others to provide direction. For me, as an ICF credentialed coach, when I start a conversation with a client, I say, what do you want to get out of the session? And the reason that I'm doing that is because it's forcing them to I have to look within and I have to ask myself, what do I need? What do I want? Where do I need help? And that's ripening them from going from socialized mind to self-authoring mind. But I know I have a socialized mind client every time someone goes, I'm having trouble with my calendar and I need you to give me some tips and tricks. They want some tips and tricks instead of going, how do I want my schedule to look like? You know, it's deeper work. When it comes to goals and accountability, they get pretty distracted because other people, well, you know, it's like, oh, I love my job, it's great. A recruiter calls me, oh, but wait, maybe there's something else, because there isn't the inner connection to purpose and really what they want to do with their life and their career. When in terms of consciousness, they are their thoughts. Whatever's running on loop in their head unconsciously is driving their identity. And really, there's a little more victim. Life happens to me, right? This happened to me, not for me and not through me, which is the higher levels. Self-authoring mind. This is, again, the mind that's willing to get itself behind the wheel to drive. And so when it's designing its path, it's clear on where it wants to go, and it's orienting its communication on what do I believe others need to hear to best further my own mission of my design. So it's really good in that it's problem solving, it's independent, it can do things on its own, really agenda driving and focused. And the leader is learning to lead here. The challenge is it's doing things by its own design, right? So it's almost like, ooh, I did everything based on what everyone else said. Now it's my way or the highway. And self-transforming will move us a little more to the middle. So that might be a little bit, you know, the con in this kind of mind is that there's blind spots sometimes, and plans might be flawed if you're operating in a higher level role. Cues, you have a self-authoring mind, or with your colleagues, you're moved from authored by others to authored by self. So I know who I am, I know what's important to me, and I know where I'm going with my life. Really feel empowered by being a source of their own results. And with consciousness, again, knowing like, ooh, there's that recurring thought, it just woke up and it's creating my anxiety, I can do something about it. When the unexpected happens, there's a differentiation, like that instead of life's happening to me, life happens for me. What are the gifts in the experience? So example from my own life, I mentioned earlier that my dad was an alcoholic growing up. My dad still is an alcoholic. He had an experience, he's almost 80, he went in the hospital, and instead of me being, I'm addicted to chaos and this is drama, it's like, oh, what a gift. I can go in there, I can help him get some stuff set up, I can do that advanced medical directive he's always said he wants, and I can get him stable, and whatever he does after, that's okay. But there's gifts in this experience, even though the old me would have been derailed by it and like the chaos. So that's kind of the life happens for me. And finally, the self-transforming mind. This is, I can stand back from my own filter. So oftentimes when I do another conversation, I have these little sunglasses that I've created, because our filter in life has been created by our life experiences. So I use these little glasses because it's how I filter life and what I'm able to see and not see, and blind spots and unconscious bias and all that kind of stuff. But like, just an example, I have different flags here. I was born in America. I spent a year living in the south of France, changed my life, and a summer living in Italy, which was wonderful, but also isolating. Those are all formative life experiences. I know they influence me, and sometimes I got to take those glasses off so that I can see the world through a filter other than my own. Wow, if we had that during COVID and all the choices to make, and could let everyone make their own decisions about what would keep the world safe and healthy, we'd probably have much better relationships and a significant lesser amount of breakdown in relationship. So this kind of leader, I actually went to one of my colleagues from when I did the program. You may or may not know her. Her name is Kara Taylor Miller. She did the PhD in leadership. She goes by the developmental coach. I would follow her on Instagram, connect with her on LinkedIn. She's amazing. And she's done coaching in all of the organizations mentioned in the book and everyone culture. But I said, Kara, what are some cues you're working with a self-transforming mind? Because again, it's rare, and I personally haven't got there, but this is where I want to get as a leader. So she shared that really this kind of leader is moving from envisioning best practices to having a vision that is distinct and unique, right? Very more, I personally believe, very soul oriented. And I don't mean like School of Leadership soul, but SOUL, like, ooh, I'm on a mission. There's something here. This is unique. This is distinct that I'm operating from. Strategic thinking can really begin from external feedback or misalignment. So it's not taking feedback as, wow, this hurts my ego because the ego has dissolved. It's like, oh, misalignment, detour, I'm ways I can reroute. Consciousness, I find this kind of leadership to be more spiritual, where life is happening through me. It's coming through me. It's not happening to me, but as a leader, I just take things and purpose flows from me. So again, this final movement is really moving one from less egocentric to focus on what is good for the whole. If you want other examples of this kind of leader, someone once said to me, hey, what are some examples of a self-transforming leader? Ray Dalio. So if you want, you can follow him on LinkedIn. He's makes a lot of posts. He is the CEO of Bridgewater, and Bridgewater was one of the companies in an everyone culture. And so he had this post, you gotta understand your ego barrier. So he's definitely a self-transforming leader. All right, we're going to round out our conversation today to look at what I've described in a little bit of my accounting lingo, so bear with me. What are some common leadership assets and behavioral liabilities? How does this show up? And this is completely related to adult development. So looking at this next slide I've got right here, this is a visual display from a tool that I use in leadership development work, which is called the Leadership Circle Profile. So the Leadership Circle Profile is a 360 that measures leadership effectiveness and not job performance. And I love it because when I'm doing a coaching engagement, you can see it looks like there's a lot of pieces of the pie. It reveals, work on this piece of the pie. There's this thing that you can work on that will produce a high yield result. So the top half of the circle, which is the green that you see, is the valuable leadership assets, the valuable leadership attributes. And the bottom half of the circle are liabilities. These are ineffective ways of being that get in the way of leadership effectiveness. And the reason I call it assets and liabilities, sorry, I'm a nerd, I'm an inactive CPA, but the way a balance sheet works is that if you have an asset of $100 cash in the bank, but you have a bill, you have to pay your Visa $100, those negate out. So really your value is zero. And that's how this model works, is the things that are opposite, they pull each other down. So it works really well in accounting, but it's a way that my little nerdy heart, soul, mind was able to wrap around it. The correlation, or I should say connection to adult development is this. When you're operating from the reactive, that's an indicator that you are a socialized mind. And the liabilities down there and that kind of leadership is driven by unconscious fears. So I'll show you in a minute what those behaviors are, but it's about consciousness and adult development. The top half are the assets. That's more of when a person is operating from self-authoring. I know who I am, I know what's important, I know my purpose, I know where I'm driving things, and or leadership, the divine is flowing through me a lot, even more purpose, even more of that distinct vision there. What does it actually look like practically? So you'll see there are two domains, the creative and the reactive. There's more to the model, but it's confusing. I'm not going to go there. But for the sake of this conversation, there is creative. So these are the assets. These are the effective attributes. Somebody is scoring highly, or they're aspiring to be more effective in relating. Relating is made up of caring, mentoring, teamwork, and interpersonal skills. Then there is the being that somebody brings, right? When they step into a virtual setting in Zoom, or they physically step into a board meeting, what shows up? Are they balanced? Is there composure? Do they have integrity? Are they courageous? And then there's also achieving, right? Are they visionary? Is there strategic thinking? Are they able to make decisions? Again, there's the things that are the opposite of this. So on the reactive side, these are the ineffective things, and these are the behaviors that the socialized mind more often exhibits. So complying, there's lots of people pleasing, I really want to belong, and I'm passive. Those things get in the way of what we just said was effective, making decisions. I want everybody to be happy. Sometimes when you make decisions as a leader, not everyone's going to be happy. There's protective. Protective shows up when people are distant. They're not like leaning in, like, you're a parent. How are you today? It's like, oh, got to get to work, right? They're critical of others' works, or arrogance. I always have the answers. Competence, and not curiosity. And then there's controlling, being autocratic and making decisions, ambition, putting yourself above others, and then perfectionism. So those are the ineffective behaviors. If you want, you're like, wow, this is great. I'm curious. I want to learn more. You can go to the Leadership Circle website. They've got some great books. Bill Adams and Bob Anderson are the authors there. I love them. You can also do a self-assessment, say, hey, where do I score? But that's really only part of the equation, because consciousness, right? Like, how do I see myself? But how do others see me? And that's when I do an assessment like this for someone, how do they see themselves versus how others sees themselves, is very, very rich. All right, so what I want to do now is just really kind of wrap it up and look at, well, how do we as individuals and as leaders learn how to lead with increased complexity and ambiguity? Because COVID amplified, like, oh, we're living in a VUCA world. And I think we kind of knew that, but like now we've been feeling it, really, really feeling it. So for those of you who went to Souls, I hope the balcony perspective is still alive. I know I think of it all the time, and geez, I graduated from the program in 2007. So beautiful metaphor that came out of Heifetz. But really, extraordinary leadership is often the direct result of a leader who has self-awareness. So how often are you getting to the balcony and stopping and checking in with yourself and noticing what you're bringing to a space? And it doesn't mean that you need to show up as a perfect and put together, but it means you know what's going on within your own self, in the landscape of you, and that you're conscious and you can see yourself in a deeper way. And I love the metaphor of getting to the balcony, right? Because what it does, and I tell this to clients, like, imagine you can get in a drone and you're lifting up and you're looking down and going like, what am I doing? Who am I? And for those of you who aren't a parent like me and have seen every recent Disney movie, I highly recommend the movie Soul, because there's a part of that movie where there's these characters called Mystics Without Borders. And their whole thing is they find the lost souls. So there's this clip and there's this lost soul. It's like this black blob and it's going around cycling all crazy, and they grab it and they kind of work with it. And this little soul looks down at earth, and it looks down and it sees itself as sitting at the cubicle. And when it was all crazy, it was like it was a hedge fund manager, and it's going, make a trade, make a trade, make a trade, make a trade. And that's when our unconscious thought patterns, maybe do this, let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. And the little soul looks down and it goes, that's me? What am I doing with my life? So whether you hire a professional coach that helps you to look down and figure that out, or whether you do it with yourself, do it. Stop and make time for reflection to say, where am I at? And am I on this road that I want to be on? Or is it time for me to make a detour? Your growth is really your own responsibility, right? So often when I work with people, the socialized mind will be like, well, my company should do X and my company should do Y. And it's like, but have you asked for that? Because if you haven't asked, the answer is no. So your growth and your inner work is your responsibility. I do work with people a lot like, hey, you want to do coaching? Awesome. Let's get your company to pay for it. How can we go in on this together? What's the value for them? But ultimately, your inner work is your responsibility. We'll wrap you up with a quote here that I love, which comes out of the work from the authors of the Leadership Circle profile. And it says, talking about how do we upgrade performance. So if we want higher order performance, consciousness must be restructured. Remember, adult development is how you restructure it. So the good news is consciousness, much like the operating system on our laptops, on our phone, can be upgraded for more optimal performance. Thank you everyone for your time today. I hope this really woke you up to new possibilities, reoriented your approach to professional development and performance. And for those of you who are ever interested in connecting with me, I'm more than happy to do that. You can find my contact information on my website. It is geared towards accountants, but it's so much more than that. And I also have a team of coaches. So you're like, I'm curious what coaching is. If you want to do something like that, we offer an empowered hour. So a single hour with one of our coaches really can provide someone with an experience of coaching and give you clarity and perspective that you need. It's completely confidential. And really coaching is like, where am I at? Where do I want to be? And how do I get there? And we're not here to give you advice. We're here to create the space for you to explore what's next. So thank you all for your time. I will hang out and answer any Q&A. I have plenty of extra time, but if you need to go to something, I totally understand. So thank you and have a wonderful day.
All right, Miss Amber. I'm not seeing any Q&As in the Q&A function here, but I am seeing a lot of thank yous and appreciation for the great insight. This is amazing work. As we talked about, you mentioned how you and I were in class together way back when, and those classes, even as an undergrad, really left some like transformational opportunities for me in my life at the ripe old age of 19. I don't think I was ready for that weekend seminar at 19 years old.
Leadership for change. Yeah, it's rattling and unnerving for sure. But I concur. One of the things I did with my website was I was like, oh, this will be cool to have a book list. As you can tell, I read a lot, so I'm always talking about books. And I pulled out a book that I read when I was first enrolled in 2005. And it gave an example of an accounting firm. And I put the quote because I'm like, it's 17 years later, it's the same leadership challenge, like USD is ahead of its time. The theories that we look at are ways of helping leaders grow, reflection, purpose, all of that USD had an indelible mark. And so I love to be of service, to be connected to fellow like-minded toreros, and thank you.
Thank you. I'm so proud of you. It has been an absolute joy to see your career trajectory since our days as students at USD, and my goodness, to be able to witness all that you're accomplishing, both in your personal life as a mom and in your profession, is just, and like, I am just a big cheerleader and big fan. So thank you for your time today. We love highlighting you, and for everyone who's still sticking around, I do have a just a brief exit slide to say thank you. If you want to connect with Amber, here is her email address. Amber, I pulled this from what we had for this session, so hopefully that's the one that you want everyone else to have access to. And then please note that we have a lot of upcoming virtual events, and we have in-person events as well. So check us out at alumni.sandiego.edu. Take advantage of the USD network. My goodness, there are amazing human beings such as Amber as part of this alumni network, and we are always anxious and willing to offer those opportunities for you to connect with fellow Toreros. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you for your time, and go Toreros.